Okay, welcome to iTip Tuesday. I'm a couple of minutes late here, and I appreciate if you've got any comments if you're watching live, feel free to put that into the YouTube channel. Every Friday, Jeff Richardson and I record an In the News podcast, and it's great. We love it. Jeff Richardson blogs at iPhoneJD.com, and every Friday he posts an In the News post, and we cover it then and talk about it, go into a little more detail on the podcast. We actually have a YouTube channel where you can watch that as well. But every Friday, we also, each of us, share a tip, something that we like to talk about. And my tip from last Friday was about the brand new Safari tab bar in iOS 15. And I wanted to cover it again here, go into a little bit more detail and show you some of the specifics on this. So in iOS 15, which was released last Monday by Apple on the 20th, September 20th, it wasn't a lot of huge differences. Jeff and I go over all the big and the small changes on that. But one of the changes wasn't that big of a deal, but man, did it blow up the internet. What Apple decided to do in the Safari web browser on the iPhone is they took that URL box or the URL bar from the top of the browser and put it down at the bottom of the browser. And man, oh man, did everybody just blow up. I think a lot of people just didn't like the fact that it was a pretty big change there from the way they've been used to using the Safari web browser. And if you just Google anything about this, you can see I've got a small selection of stories on the screen here where everybody really is just telling you how you can change it back. To the point where I was like, okay, am I missing something? Because honestly, last Monday when I downloaded iOS 15 and I started using the new tab bar in Safari, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It took me about 2 or 3 minutes, honestly. And then I was completely sold. One tweet that I found from somebody that I follow, Alex Lindsay, he tweeted out, "It's actually built for thumbs." And he says, "I didn't know that I needed that." And I love it. That's exactly the way that I figure about this. So I'm going to go in and just show you a little bit, some tips on using that brand new Safari bar in the Safari in iOS 15 here. If you got any questions, feel free to put them there in the comments as well. So you can see I've switched into the Safari web browser on my iPhone here, and you can see at the bottom now is the tab bar that everybody is just going bananas about. But there's a few things that I like. First of all, this is very helpful to me in how I use my phone. This is typically how I'm holding my iPhone. You can see it on here. And as I'm holding the iPhone here, let me just go into the Do Not Disturb on this, or the brand new Focus, which is something new on here as well. We'll cover that maybe another time. But as I jump in here, the tab bar is at the very bottom. And I like that because it's exactly where my thumb fits, exactly where it's supposed to be. So a couple of things. Number one is if you needed to tap in and type in a new URL like appsandlaw.com or CNN.com, I would typically have to do that with two hands, right? Because I would hold the iPhone in my right hand and I would use my left hand to tap up into the top of the box so that I could change the URL. But I don't need to do that anymore. I simply just take my thumb and tap down into the bottom here, and you can see that URL is highlighted, and I can type in appsandlaw or CNN.com. I hope that makes sense. That was a pretty big deal now. In fact, I do sometimes have to tap up the cancel if I want to, but if I needed to go to a different website, that's so much more simpler and easier to access for me by just tapping there into that tab bar down at the bottom. The second thing that's really nifty is I typically have a lot of tabs open in my Safari browser. And now, if I wanted to jump to a different tab, I simply just take my thumb and I can just swipe it left to right on that tab bar, and I can see all of my open tabs. I love that. I can do it with one hand now instead of having to go in and tap something different. Now, make sure that you are swiping your thumb left to right on that tab bar. Don't go too low. If you go too much lower on your screen, what you're going to be doing is you're actually going to be swiping back and forth between your different apps in there. And that's not what you necessarily want. You just want to be able to swipe back and forth onto your tab bar there. So that's the other thing. Another thing I love about it is that sometimes I don't remember what tabs that I have open. So if I wanted to see all my open tabs, I simply just take my thumb and just swipe up on that tab bar. It's just a very quick swipe, and you can see immediately now it gives me sort of a tiled interface of all of my open tabs. And then if whichever one that I want to jump to, I just simply tap it with my thumb and it goes right there. So just take your thumb and swipe up quickly onto that tab bar, and it gives you a view of all of your open tabs. Now, we used to do this by tapping on that little tab button, which is in the bottom right corner there, the little two squares there. And you can still do that if you want to. You can tap that little tab button and it does the exact same thing. I just like the little quick little flip up now with my thumb that I can jump in here and get access to see all of my different tabs that are open. And then I can jump to the one that I want to jump to on that. Also, another thing I love is that once I swipe up quickly on that, in the bottom left corner, you can see there's a plus sign. So that allows me to then open up a brand new tab so that I can type in something by just simply using my thumb on there. I find that all to be so much more easier. And lastly, when I am looking at my set of tabs, there's a little round X on the upper right corner of each of those tabs. And so I can close out of one of those tabs by simply just tapping that little X. Love that. Now, a couple more things. Once I'm out of there, to get out of there, there's that little done in the bottom right corner. I just tap done with my thumb. Now, you can also tap and hold on that brand new tab bar. If you tap and hold, a couple of options come up. You can copy that URL. I like to do that to paste it into an email or something else. I can do a paste and search. So you access that by just simply tapping your thumb and holding on that tab bar, and those options will come up. By the way, you can also tap and drag. You got to kind of do that really quick, but if you tap and drag on that tab bar here, you can actually will float the URL. And I will use a second hand at this point. I can swipe up and go to a completely different app, like my email app or my notes app, and then I can simply just drop that URL, floating URL bar there into a different app. It's similar to copy and paste, but sometimes it's a little bit more fun to do it with floating that URL on there. I think that's all that I really had. I just wanted to show you some of the ways, the many ways that I am loving the new Safari tab bar on here, contrary to what a lot of people are not loving it. I understand if people do want to move it. If you do want to move it to the top, you can simply tap on the little AA button down here, which is the reader button. And if you tap on that, one of the options in the very top of this little context menu is show top address bar. And if you do that, it goes right back up to the top where you would always have it. In my mind, I can't stand that now. I love having this bottom tab bar, and it's so much more functional and easier to access for me. Well, that's it. If you have any questions on anything, you can tell I really like to talk about this. So feel free, if you got a comment in YouTube, you can do that, or send me an email. Feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel or go to appsandlaw.com. You can sign up at my blog there as well. And then, as I mentioned, every Friday, Jeff Richardson and I have an In the News podcast. You can sign up for the audio podcast at inthenewspodcast.com, or you can also watch our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks again.